since Urban Meyer got fired, the Jags went from a favorite against the Texans to a bigger favorite against the Texans. That's kind of crazy.
Has a $80 million coach ever been worth minus 2 points? Because that's essentially what they're saying. He's worth minus 2 points. Usually a quarterback is worth what? Like legitimately 7 points. Like if I'm Aaron Rodgers and we're playing the Bucks and it's a pick 'em, and then you remove Aaron Rodgers and start Jordan Love, what would that line immediately change to? Bucks plus 10, minus 10 or something?
It'd be a lot.
He's worth 10 points. They say Urban Meyer is not even worth a point, guy. He's the opposite. It's a net gain.
Yes, he holds his team back because of his now the funny thing is I watch them a lot. Well, I've seen them play games that I thought they should be mailing the game in, and they didn't.
Who?
The Jags. They're just bad.
Oh, yeah.
But remember, like the game didn't they play well? Did they win the game? Yeah, they won. The game after everyone was making fun of him for his photos, for his pit stop photos. Remember that? I think they played well the next week. They might have won the next week. They've won twice this year, so it shouldn't be too hard to identify their wins. That feels too long ago to have been their first win, though.
Yeah,
but
they were 0-4 after that debacle happened on Thursday night. I don't know if they won the next week, but
okay. Well, anyway, I do think there's something to you get out from under the thumb of Urban Meyer, and people there's no question. You sent me the clip from Darrell Bevell's press conference. People are walking with a little pep in their step around the Jags facility probably today.
Guy, they asked the head coach if he realized, you're right, they did. They won 2 weeks later.
Okay.
They asked.
Did they go to
coach,
one? Anyway.
Yeah, they played the Bengals. Then they just played the Titans and lost. But then they beat the Dolphins. Then they beat the Bills. Sneaky highlight of Urban's career, right? Beating the Bills at home, 9-6.
Definitely good win. He might have affected the AFC playoff race.
I mean, they asked Darrell Bevell if he realized that he could have more wins in the last month of the season than Urban's career in the NFL, and it was a serious question. Guy, they asked last week. Did you see the thing that went viral of the reporter asking Urban Meyer what it felt like to watch his offensive line? He used the word "get their ass kicked" and overwhelmed, and Urban's response to the question was, "Yeah." I think I read an article this morning from Dan Wetzel. He had a good point. Like, that is just the BP fastball for Mike Tomlin, for Belichick, for Andy Reid. One, that would never happen to them. But if that situation does where you're pressing an individual unit, you double down getting their back, even if you think they suck.
Right.
And he just said yes. So is it possible that he truly was trying to get fired this last 3 or 4 weeks? Like, I don't think he was the night that he was at the bar. Like, I just think he was kind of out of touch. But I do wonder these last couple weeks he just didn't give a shit. Like, truly didn't give a shit.
Yeah, it's possible. He didn't want to quit. Like, I think one thing, he couldn't quit again, right? Couldn't quit.
You don't get paid that way also.
But yeah, but I just mean even beyond that. Like, I don't think he could quit again.
For a third time, you're saying?
I just think, yeah, you can't quit. You cannot quit in his spot. The money, obviously, a big part of it. But I just think first and foremost, you can't quit. So it's possible. But here's the thing. Like, this Josh Lambo thing happened
training camp.
A couple months ago. Yeah, a while back. September, whatever it was.
Do you think the Lambo thing had anything to do with him getting fired? Because I don't really think it had much to do. Did you see last week?
Well,
it was either last week or 2 weeks ago there was a play. It might have been the Rams game. It might have been 3 weeks ago, the Falcons game, where James Robinson, the running back, who's clearly one of their better players, I think they had a big fourth down spot or a big red zone spot, and he wasn't in the game for a couple plays.
Yeah.
And after the game, Urban kind of claimed, like, that's on my assistants. And then they asked Trevor Lawrence at the podium, and he's like, basically said that's unacceptable. He's our best player. He needs to be in the game. And I wonder if, like, Trevor Lawrence had been saying in a nice way, just kind of like, what's going on here? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. I wonder if that was the biggest reason of, like, we're going to lose our potential. This is our only hope out of disaster, right, is him.
The Lambo thing becoming public was interesting, right? Because it's something that Shad Khan's known for months, because Lambo went to HR basically with it.
Oh, he did? I didn't even. He told the team or something?
Yeah, he reported it.
I Googled him. He hadn't been in the league all year, and there's been a million fucking kickers rotating. So it's like.
Can't hit an employee, John.
He said it was a 5 out of 10 kick. On it. If me and you were standing there, what would you actually imagine it was? Like a 2 out of 10? Do you think he fucking kicked them? I think he was a dick to him.
I'll say this for Lambeau, like for him to put it on a scale and put it at 5 is to say like, look, man, I know he wasn't, he wasn't going to bruise me probably, but let's not, I know what everyone's going to say. You're all going to say he probably just tapped me. And I'm telling you, he didn't just tap me. So that was the one part of it. I'm like, okay. Like he knew everyone's reaction. My reaction was, come on, bro. Did he really kick you? He's like, no, I'm telling you, I know that's what you're going to think. I'm not saying it was an 8. I'm just saying it was a 5. So I appreciate that. It seems insane. How about him walking around just calling the kicker?
Well, if you know you're going to cut a veteran player for a different kicker, there's a chance he had zero respect for Josh Lambeau. Like he was irrelevant to Urban Meyer.
Absolutely. That sounds like that definitely was the case. But I think I think one thing good coaches know is you can be ruthless when you cut a player, but have respect for what they do. Like if you ever hear Bill Belichick talk about what players do, even though Bill is known as ruthless when it comes to player personnel decisions, right? And he's hard on you and he'll call you out and all that shit. By the way, earned with all those Super Bowls. I do think Bill also has like I've heard Kyle Shanahan. You hear players, you hear coaches. I can't tell you, and I'm sure you have, how many coaches I've heard talk like, you know what? The one thing you remember as a coach is on Sunday or on Monday, you walk in the facility early to grind tape, your body feels the same as it did on Saturday or Sunday. Like college player being a Saturday. For the players, it is different. And we have to respect that as coaches. I think most coaches get that. Respect the player's body.
I also think this. I think you can kind of verbally attack certain position groups and certain players. You know, a D tackle, a running back, kind of push them.
A group that you coach, maybe.
And
your specialty.
I wouldn't even say you coach. I'm just saying, like, I think you can be hard on a George Kittle, Trent Williams. You know, there's a certain. I think kickers universally, it's much more mental. You almost treat like a golfer. Like I was around Alex Henry, who's one of the great, not quite a Aguayo level bust, but a pretty big bust. I mean, we got rid of David Akers. We drafted a kicker in the 4th round. Until he got cut, they treated him kind of with kick. He's a kicker. You just don't. You don't get anything out of being mean to the kicker. Honestly, it's kind of bullying the guy that can't defend himself. It's kind of stupid, right? I mean, there have been countless stories of D linemen getting in it with coaches. Like they're used to it, right? If you go to a practice, you and I have been to a million. You go to the O line, D line. It's kind of like, goddamn, there's just a lot of, just fire. Right, you watch the kickers on the side. How often do you ever see like there's a lot of fire over here? Right, it's more just talking through it. Hell, we were around Seabass, who's physically probably one of the most unique kickers ever, and even he was just you got to be careful around him. Just let him make his kicks, leave him alone. Right?
I know.
Urban might just be an idiot.
It's not. It's I've not
an idiot, but he's just. I wonder if he just lives in an alternate universe.
Well, I mean, I think his universe involves him believing he is the expert on management, leadership type stuff. He probably looks at Jacksonville and thinks, shitty organization, they need me to come shake it up.
Well, they begged him to take the job, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, Shad Khan did. Trevor Lawrence didn't. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to earn the respect of players if you're brand new to the league. The one thing is that I could tell very early, it was obvious to everybody. Everybody was rooting against him in the NFL. I think the media in the NFL, the people in the NFL, they rightly believe that the NFL is the highest level of football and that not just anybody can waltz in here and just do what we do here. And I think as it relates to Urban, they were right. But I didn't like how anytime 100% of people agree on something, I tend to go, this is too much agreement. I don't like 100% agreement. Something's off. If you see a Rotten Tomatoes score on a movie that's 100%, you're like, well, have not enough people voted? Like 100? 100's nuts. Like 100 is, you're cooking the books when it's 100 of anything. 100% approval of any restaurant. No, somebody had a bad experience with the fish or a waiter, some random lame complaint. It's been 100%. Everyone's just going after him. I haven't loved that part of it. So in some weird ways, I've wanted it to work, but he's not easy. I'm not rooting for him. Does that make sense? I'm not rooting for him. I just don't love what an easy target he is, but you have to admit, like he made himself that target.
Well, let's use the two most famous college coaches that went pro over the last decade. It was Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer. I think people clearly rooted against both. I think Chip felt the same thing. The difference was, I don't think people necessarily like rooted against Chip and he might be a dick or whatever, and he can be rough around the edges. But they rooted against Chip because it felt like, oh, he's going to revolutionize our sport football-wise, like his offense. That's why. So a lot of, and I think you talk to any defensive guy in the NFL, like, fuck this guy. You're going to run that hurry-up shit on me? Good luck, buddy. It was completely football. And it might have been a little making fun of the smoothies or whatever, but it was really the offense. Urban Meyer had nothing to do with schematics, the hatred. All right? It was just, that guy's an asshole. Like, that guy is a dick. And I think, and I know I've thought this for a while, I think he's a fraud. And when I say a fraud, I don't mean like he earned his championships. He, to me, is a politician in the sense of, not in the NFL, but like he acts one way and he likes to portray this morale, this kind of like moral superiority and, everything leader. But he's like, his own personal ethics are just completely fraudulent. And I think the crazy part is it didn't come out in college. Obviously, he had the situation with the coach, but in fairness to him on that, like, he was not the guy doing anything, right? We've seen it before where things like, I'm not saying he defended that guy, and clearly he was in bed with that guy's family, but it's like he had a long history of Florida, bunch of drug dealers on the team. He had a player murdering people. It's like that's a fact. That's not an opinion. Now, but you always go, how much did he truly know? No one really knows except him, but he always acted like he was just this great human being. And it's like, well, this thing. And this year, for the first time, it was really coming out like calling his coaches losers. Treating it's like, this guy's just a dick. People like call Belichick and Saban assholes. I actually think they're just hard. They're just like kind of tough coaches. Like they're hard on people, right? But I think we played golf, whatever, with Shane Vereen, loved Belichick. You see the way these players talk about Nick Saban. Again, if you are a competitor worth your salt, you want to be around people that are going to push you. Now, there's sometimes it's no different than growing up, right? Your parents get mad at you and you look back, you're like, that's the best thing. My parents forced me to do this and this. It benefited me when I'm 20 and 30 and 40. That's what it always feels like with Belichick. And like, how often do players say truly negative things about Belichick after they're done playing for him? Feels like a very, very small list, if any.
Yeah.
And to me, Urban was just, it was all asshole, nothing else. Like, Urban, well, you're not helping these guys be good at anything. So you can't just be a dick and then bring nothing else to the table. Right?
Yep. Yeah. I think it's not just about being a dick. Like, I think the videos of him at that bar with the girl changed everything. Not because of the videos, but because he had to address them with his team. And he told the team, like, oh, no, they're not. It's nothing. It's nothing. Right. She just came over for a photo, I think was his initial story. But then the other videos come out. And then his players know our coach just lied to us. He lied to us. Right. He lied. At that point, I don't think there was any coming back from that video. I said at the time, is
there a chance he never even cared that much about this job once the season started? He realized, like, this is not for me. And just
like, I don't even want to be here.
Isn't that a good example? He is in the NFL. He stays in Columbus, Ohio, which let's just say that's not that big a deal. I'm sure it's happened before. Everyone acted like every coach always flies home with the team. I'm sure there's been a couple instances over the years on bye weeks or something where he's at his own bar, and he's not like in the VIP room. He's literally at the front of the bar. He's Urban fucking Meyer in Columbus, Ohio. That, to me, looking back, and I've defended him in the sense of like, everyone assumes he's in some perfect marriage. Who knows? But that is kind of an FU, like, I'll do whatever I want. And I just wonder if he ever even cared about the job that much once the job actually started.
Well, that's a good question. To the other thing, I think it's just I don't have to change anything about what I do to coach in the NFL. I'm not changing a thing. I'm not adjusting. I'm not adapting.
Was he going out and about like at the bar if he was coaching Ohio State? I bet he wouldn't have, right? Because he knew that would go viral in the town.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I don't think he was actively trying to get fired by going to the bar. I don't think that's what that was. Because it was a pretty, like, I watched him talk to his team at the video, or you read the stories about him talking to his team. Like, that's an embarrassing situation that he put himself through.
Yeah.
Whether he was right or wrong, I don't know what his marriage situation is, right? But that was an embarrassing situation to stand up in front of your players and explain that. But you're right. Maybe he took the job and went, this, whatever. I'll just, whatever. The one thing I'll say, though,
I don't think I don't think he thought that like at the beginning. He's like, I need this new challenge. I want to prove. I do wonder, and maybe like the free agency, the draft, that just gets your juices flowing. Then you actually get around the players. And maybe you start thinking in OTAs like, God, this is a little different in spring ball. These guys don't automatically listen to me. And then you get into training camp and then the games and you realize this sucks. He lost, you know that he lost 9 games at Ohio State? He lost 2 more games in the pros. Think about that.
Crazy. Yeah.
And that was the knock, right? He's not only does he's not used to winning, or I mean losing, of course. I mean, neither Saban, neither's Kirby, all the top, Ryan Day. He's notoriously bad at handling losing. I remember Phil Savage told me, he's like, you know what's crazy about Nick Saban after he did the games forever? He's like, he's actually better after losses because everyone else freaks, and that's when he comes through like, hey, guys, it's going to be okay. He's actually harder on the team. Now, maybe not like the SEC championship and shit he lets loose, but I'm just talking like a regular season loss against Ole Miss. The town, the players, the entire program freaks. He's the one guy who's actually like, he's the beacon of positive energy at that time.
Well, don't you think a lot of good coaches are like that? Like, I'm not saying everybody's Saban, but what do you always say after a team wins like 7 in a row? You know, late September, October, November, they're going to be a playoff team. Then they lose a game. What does everyone
peaking
always
too
say?
early?
No, they lose the game, and then you go, you know what? This is just a chance to kind of reset. You know, the coaches don't hate it. They can go back to coaching players up a little bit. You always say that when a good team, postseason set up, they lose a game, and it's like, all right, just a chance to kind of take a step back, reset. You don't have the pressure of a winning streak anymore. I think a lot of coaches are like, now, they were doing more than just like winning streak, losing a game. It was a mess, but I think you're right. I think the best coaches, that is what you pay them for, is when it's not going well, how do we find solutions? And not only was he not a solution guy, it felt like he freaked out at the failure that they were having, which only made it harder to get people to follow him. Impossible.
Well, it's weird. Do you know the weirdest part about, like, especially the level he was at, right? Ohio State, Florida. If you just went to, you know, like a Mario Cristobal practice, or, you know, an Oklahoma practice or a Nick Saban practice, and you just went to a Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay practice, if you just spent a couple hours at the practice, it might not look that crazy different, right? If it was a padded practice, the periods, the individual to the group, to the team, there'd be some music, there'd be whistles, there'd be a horn, they'd all be moving in sync, right? The actual football, I don't think it would look that dramatically different, especially if you went to the highest level of college football where their size, the players physically would look pretty similar. Hell, I mean, some college teams might even be bigger than certain NFL teams. The football aspect of just the practice, I think, is pretty similar spot to spot. The major difference to me are the meetings, because in the meetings, you are kind of establishing dominance. I think you have to attack it a little different in the pros. Like, you are... Andrew Whitworth just fucking started a game at left tackle. He's 40 years old. So you're not... Sean McVay ain't yelling at him. He doesn't need to. You don't... Remember... My take with Chip Kelly when he came with the smoothies is like, wait, you're going to tell Navarro Bowman and Joe Staley how to, like, what nutrition they should have? Like, they've been in the league and combined, like, 8, they have, like, 7 Pro Bowls combined. Like, they know how to feed their body. And Chip was never known in a weird way for being, like, he's not really a screamer. Like, that's not, like, Urban. No. When I think Urban, I think screamer. When I think Chip, I just think subtle jabs, but he's not. He's
sharp, intellectual.
Kind of avoids confrontation. I think Urban yearns for it.
Here's the thing. Urban did not earn being in Chip's territory in the NFL. Chip went 10-6, 10-6. Chip was over 500 in Philly. He was,
but again,
actually,
Chip
no, he
called
wasn't, because he went.
He went.
Oh, he was. He was 26-21. 26-21.
Now it got really ugly the third year, and he was escorted out of the building. Remember?
Yeah, and really ugly was 6-9, and then the next coach that had success there also had a bad breakup with the organization, who won a Super Bowl. So it's hard to put that all on him.
Yeah, and they had weird stuff going on with Carson.
Yeah,
but
anyway,
but the Chip example, one of Urban's main problems is, like, when you think the CEO head coaches, and we talked about this the other day, you go to Baltimore or Pittsburgh because they're the most famous. Well, Harbaugh and Tomlin. Well, Harbaugh got a job that he inherited Terrell Suggs, who I actually saw this summer when I stayed the week in Arizona, still jacked. Ray Lewis in his prime, Ed Reed, and Haloti Ngata. Like they had the infrastructure of greatness and leadership. And same thing with Tomlin, right? Both teams equipped to win. Culture already established. We just need a high-level guy. Like, the boat's going down the river. Can you just keep the boat from hitting either side of the land? Just keep it going. And both of them clearly were made for that. Like, when I think those guys are made to be CEO head coaches. He took over a terrible team, and then he doesn't call plays. So Chip took over a team in turmoil because they hadn't been winning, but he did inherit some really good players. And then he was the guy calling the plays with, like, Macklin, Shady, Deshaun. So Chip's getting, like, move all the strings. Urban's just screaming at his offensive coaches. Did you see Aaron Wilson's tweet yesterday? A source told him that he told the offensive assistants, or maybe it was the entire coaching staff, that he had better coaches at Bowling Green.
What is he doing?
Like, I'm starting to believe that all this stuff might be like he might have said this stuff.
What is he doing?
I
Trying
think
to motivate coaches? Like, did he feel like they put on him? Yeah, maybe. Maybe he did.
Not maybe wanted to get fired is the wrong way to put it.
Just
maybe
he knew he
truly
couldn't succeed.
Or just truly remember us in the bullpen at the radio station when we truly did not give a fuck. That feeling of don't give a fuck, it in a weird way, it's empowering. We truly didn't give a fuck, and we were making way less than him. So can you imagine me and you in that situation? If you truly believe everyone's a clown, it's under, like, I get it, of just treating everyone like an
asshole. The difference
is
that he
we were malcontents, guy. We were malcontents.
You were malcontent. I was very...
You were worse than me at many times, yet we're still told you could stay. It was crazy. I'll still never forget that. You did not make eye contact, I remember, on one late meeting. It was like, how's this guy he's still liked?
You ever think to yourself, like, today I'm gonna keep it together today. And then the second that meeting starts, like, I can't do this. I'm freaking out over here.
But that's where I'm saying we can relate to the sense if it truly, whether you're right or wrong, if internally and you don't need the money, you can't respect anyone.
Yeah,
it's hard to operate as a human being.
No, it's amazing when you're the guy that was the builder. Like, you came to be the builder, and you're like, I don't like any of these parts, and all the workers suck. It's like,
I know,
but you're the one that these blueprints terrible. You brought the blueprints. You made them, and maybe that's one part where you start losing respect. Okay, so is this? I think it's the stat. There's never been a coach fired in his first year after drafting number one. Overall, it's remarkable because Trevor Lawrence is viewed as a generational quarterback prospect. This year has not helped that, but I don't think people who felt that way before the season have backed off of that, right? So is this a good job? It's a remarkable opportunity if you've given the power and the money to clean house and you get Trevor Lawrence falling in your lap. I mean, guys coach their whole career and never, ever get to coach a player like Trevor Lawrence. Coaches coach in the NFL, multiple jobs. They never have a player like Trevor Lawrence, right? Kyle Shanahan's had a million jobs. He's had RG3. He's never had Trevor Lawrence. He had Matt Ryan. He's never had Trevor Lawrence.
Would Kyle Shanahan right now trade Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance for Trevor Lawrence? Because I think he would.
I mean, who would he not trade is the question for Trevor Lawrence. Who would most teams, if you said Sean McVay, Trevor Lawrence, would you want to go get him or you want to ride with Stafford? What would he say?
Because Stafford's 33, he might have to think about it. Okay. Kyle Shanahan would not hesitate. They would both be gone. I mean, you see how Stafford looked the other night? Looked pretty good. I know. Looked good. But anyway, the point is, most people don't get an opportunity to coach a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, and this guy didn't make it through the whole season. Now, he still is on the Jaguars. Is this an attractive job? Well, because of Trevor Lawrence. Well, he's the number one pick in the draft for the last 20 years in every draft except Luck. And dependent, who knows if they would have been in the same class. Is it a lock that Luck goes one against Trevor Lawrence? If they were just in the same class before we saw them play. Now, I would take Andrew Luck clearly over Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's going number one in every draft for the last 20 years. I don't even think it's debatable. Cam Newton, just go along. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff. I mean, you can go through it. It's a fact. Matt Stafford. Remember, Matt Stafford it was more just talent, less than like he had accomplished a lot at Georgia. Almost like an underachiever in a weird way. Could he hire Dabo Swinney? Like, they had a lot of success together, and they're tight. Can you hire another college coach, or you just have to go day ball? You have to go just some offensive assistant?
No, look, we'll talk about Dabo, but if your alternative is Dayball, like, who are
your options?
I'm just saying most of the Bieniemy, Dayball, are any of these guys more of a guarantee than? And I'm not saying hire Dabo. It's not what I'm saying, but let's not act like any of these guys are guarantees here. Okay, there is not, even if it was Josh McDaniels. Now Byron Leftwich, I've seen suggested by a few people. Go back to he
played there.
Played there. It's just not college. Doesn't really matter. This is not Jonathan Smith going back to Oregon State. But, I mean, he is a guy that has seen Jacksonville succeed, which might be hard for most people to visualize.
Him and Del Rio, guy.
Remember. Him and Del Rio. So, Kellen Moore. I mean, again, hire Kellen, sure. But let's not act like Kellen is more of a lock than Dabo at this point. And again, I'm not saying I would not hire Dabo. Because I think what if I were them, I would not hire a CEO head coach. I would hire somebody who I know for a fact can at least help. I would hire an offensive coach.
I think
because I don't want my coordinators having success and leaving.
Leftwich makes a lot of sense then.
And I don't want Trevor Lawrence. Like, we got to stop this right now. We got to hire the coach that coaches Trevor Lawrence for the next 5 years at least.
Well, then don't you think now?
And then if it's like, we're not getting over the next hump. Sorry.
I don't think you can hire a defensive coordinator then either.
No, I would hire an offensive head coach.
Yeah,
to work with my
calling the plays.
Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, Florida, no state income tax.
Bulky, like you tweeted, great tweet in the moment. Twitter was made for like, it's 9:15, you're laying in bed, or I'm about to hit the shower, and you see it. And I sat toilet seat down, leaned back 20 minutes, just Twitter. I was like, this is fantastic. You did the photo of Bulky. I'm the captain now. That was a great tweet.
It was. I thought about it. I was legitimately in bed. I had taken a couple Tylenol PM. I was ready to go to bed early. I didn't sleep much the night before. When you text me that, I was shocked. And then, of course, I was on Twitter for the next 30 minutes, just laying in bed, just reading person after person talk shit, because it's very enjoyable. Over someone you don't like. If I liked the person, I probably would have signed off. But it was late, right? It wasn't like this didn't happen at 7 o'clock. It happened at 9:30.
Yeah, 9:30, 9:45.
I mean, Tom Brady's already been in bed.
I know. So I don't know. I would hesitate to say it's a bad job, even though that is what it is, like relative to NFL jobs. You have Trevor Lawrence. You're in the NFL. It's an NFL job. Okay. Your facilities are good enough. Your stadium's good enough. You're not recruiting. Free agents will take your money if you offer them the most, for the most part. So while
I think that's part of why Khan had to, they weren't going to be able to get players, right? It was so toxic. I think sometimes, and you and I have talked a lot about this, PR can be overrated a little bit. Like, what does that actually fucking mean? This felt like it had almost jumped the shark. Like, it was going to be difficult just to keep them, rally the troops, and be like, hey, we got $80 million in cap space. Let's go land players. If I was a player, I would try to avoid that place like the plague, unless they overpaid me by, remember kind of what Al Davis had to do at the end. And these guys were like, well, I couldn't turn down $30 million guaranteed. Next offer I had was $5 million, right?
Right.
And you don't, it's not a winning formula. And that's what they would have to do. Where now, if you just get a Byron Leftwich or a Dayball, or just you just get a normal coach, no one even cares about Urban anymore. And you can just sign guys probably normally, right? You might have to overpay a little bit because your team's bad, but not what they would have been, and they would have had a major problem on their hands.
Lane Kiffin?
Well, can they hire a college guy? I don't know. I think you just need to get a pro guy.
So what's a more attractive job? Chicago?
But they also hired Gus Bradley, who was a pro guy, and he never won. So it's like, and he's a high character. Everyone loves him.
Bears or Jags? Better job.
I'm a bright lights guy. I like things to matter, and to me, you always act like whether you're good in the NFL. To me, the Jags, even if they're winning 10 games, anyone give a fuck?
Well, I always act like that, with the exception of a couple franchises. Like the Browns are a bad franchise, but that is not the Jags in terms of bright lights.
we've seen it with all three of their major sports teams. Like, they matter when they're good.
So I think almost all NFL jobs are created equal. And then there's the Jags job. There's the Marlins job, which is not the NFL, but let's just make fun of them. Is there anybody else in the Jags conversation?
I would. And I've never even stepped foot in Chicago. I don't even think it's a conversation. Now, quarterback does matter if you like Trevor Lawrence.
I think it's a conversation if you're an NFL head coach. Not like the Bears are some great organization at this point. It's a lot of mystique and heritage, but
if you and I are an agent for Coach X and he's offered 5 years, $50 million from both franchises, and he's like, listen, I love Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence might be a little bit better, but the quarterback does not bother me. Where would you guys recommend? I'm going to Chicago.
Yeah, if you love Justin Fields.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of people, he was a pretty polarizing player just 6 months ago.